welcome back again. It's another project. And yes, you read the title description correctly. I know some of you were thinking, hang on, he's got it the wrong way around. Nope, it's the right way around. Today's conversion is going from a twin to a single carb. Now, before you start banging on the keyboard, I can feel it already coming. What are you doing, James? Why on earth would you want to convert a car that was designed to run on a twin carb setup to a single carb? You must be nuts. You're going to lose power, performance, low end torque, whatever the thing is. Why are you doing it? It's a good question. It has pretty much one simple answer. And that answer is tuning. So, first of all, let me preface this. There's nothing wrong with the current setup. If I turn the key, this car will start. It will drive, it will do all the things it should do, no problems whatsoever. I've gone to great lengths to get it all set up nicely and correctly, and it runs perfectly. I have no real gripes with it, other than having to leave it on the choke for a little bit longer than I think I should have to, but you know, whatever, that's a small thing. So, why? Then what's the issue with the tuning? Let me just throw a quick scenario at you. Let's say your idle is a little bit high. My idle on this currently is about 900 RPM. It's just that way. It's probably crept up over the last few years of driving it. It should be ideally around 700-800 RPM. So let's say we want to drop the idle down on this to 700 RPM from 900. What do we need to do? Well, first thing we need to do is take the air filters off. What? Why do you need to take the air filters off to adjust the idle? Isn't it just adjusted on the idle screws? Here, let me zoom in for you. Whoop, excuse me, if you don't know anything about SU carbs. There's your idle screw. That just props the throttle butterfly open. And obviously there's one corresponding on the other side you can't see. However, because we've got a twin carb setup, one carb feeds these two cylinders and this carb feeds these two cylinders. So if we want to adjust the idle, we need to adjust this one and that one. Okay, what's the problem? Why do you need to take the air filters off? Because any time we start messing around with the idle, we need to vacuum balance it to make sure that it's pulling evenly on both sides. Otherwise we're getting an imbalance in the engine, which clearly we don't want. In order to use a vacuum balancing gauge, we need to take the air filters off because we need to push the vacuum balancing gauge up against the throat of the car. So we need to take the two air filters off to get access to our carb throats. Then, with our vacuum balance gauge set up, or just pushing it into the carb throat, we can start to turn the idle screws back in a little bit at a time until we get an even balance on both sides. Anytime we're adjusting our idle, it's also a good idea to check our mixture at the same time, which is controlled by the nut on the bottom of the jet, which you can't see because these two big pancake filters are in the way. So it's worth checking your mixture at the same time whilst we do the idle. No problem, right? So what's the big deal? You've just said how to do it. What's the big deal? Well, it's a ball ache, isn't it? Let's be honest. If you just want to drop your idle down a little bit, on a single carb setup, you just turn a single screw. Up, more, down, less. That's it. Because we're not trying to balance it across two banks of cylinders, it is just one of everything. One idle screw, one fast idle screw for the choke, and one mixture. And that's it. So what I'm saying is it's just a bit of a ball ache, isn't it? If I can get rid of the need to do that for tuning purposes, then it's just going to make my life a lot easier. Bear in mind also that the carb we're going to be using is a HIF44 carb. So those are HS4s. The early ones, the HS2s I believe, were 1¼ inch throats. The HS4s are 1½ inch. And the HIF44 is 1¾ inch, so it's a bigger throat on the carb, means more air going through. Now the HIF44s were used on a lot more later cars, things like the Austin Maestro, which was a turbo car, some of them. the Montego, which came with turbo, they're on supercharged cars. They're on Land Rovers, Jaguars, V8s. So admittedly, when you get to, you know, like a V8, 3.5 litre V8, you get a pair of them. But either way, if a pair of them is okay for a 3.5 litre V8, that means one will do 1700, half of the 3500, right? So it shouldn't have any problem with a 1500 engine. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know yet, I haven't tried it, we're doing it now. We should have the same level of performance, but with a lot less monkeying around. No linkages for the choke, no linkages for the throttle, no slop, no play, no bolts to mess around with, just a screw for your idles. And the thought of that I find very, very appealing. Because let's just say your AFR gauge is reading that you're running rich, which carb do you adjust? You've got twin carbs. Could be either. If it's bleeding air in, but one carb is lean and one carb is rich, how do you, on a twin carb setup, it doesn't make sense because you're only getting one AFR reading. Now, I did think about using two exhaust gauges, one for each carb, and that way I could monitor in real time on a dual gauge and see which carb is doing which. But there's a problem. And the problem is the exhaust manifold. It's quite hard to show you, but you can see the exhaust manifold comes down here as a pair and then goes into your stainless steel downpipe and goes through. And you think, well great, you could put one sensor on that side, one sensor on that side. No, because the exhaust gases don't come from 1 and 2 on this side and 3 and 4 on this side. They mix. You get 1 and 3 and then 2 and 4. So unless you want to be drilling, tapping or welding into a cast iron exhaust manifolds down there, which let's be honest, you don't, you're never going to be able to monitor each carb separately. And I'm sure it's done like that for a reason, so that you're not getting a put, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. It's balanced, 1 and 3, 2 and 4, 1 and 3, 2 and 4. So, because that was my first idea, dual AFR gauge, and then I can monitor each carb, I can make adjustments on the fly, get them all tuned in, running sweet, lovely, all that good stuff, but no. So that's something I may wish to do in future. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked, so let's just stay on target. We're talking about going to a single carb from a twin carb. We're going to need two things, aren't we? We're going to need a carb, and we're going to need a manifold. So, let's see what we got. Okay, so here's the first piece of the puzzle. This is a inlet manifold from a Triumph Toledo. It's the later type, whatever that is. I don't know much about Toledos, I'm afraid. I think they're sort of like 75, 77 onwards. But as you can see, it looks very, very familiar, right? We've got the water channel that runs through the inlet manifold, which I've never really understood. Why do you have a water channel running through an inlet manifold? Some people will say, well, it helps with cold starts because you've got water flowing through it, warm water. You haven't, have you? You've got cold water going through it, because if you've got a cold start, then your radiator is cold, your oil's cold, everything's cold. So having cold water going through it doesn't make any sense. The only time it's going to help is if you've got warm water going through it, ergo it's not a cold start. So I may even just cap that off, because I don't use the heater matrix in mine anyway, because I only drive it in summer, so I might even cap that off. I don't know. Anyway. As you can see, it looks very, very familiar. We have a hole here, which we can use for a vacuum takeoff stud for our brake booster. It's not threaded, but we can soon put a thread into that. Or we could drill through here and put a thread in there, which I think is where it appears in the other manifold. Obviously, it's designed for a single carb. It's 1.5 inches across there, so designed for a HS4 SU style carb. Obviously, the one we're going to get is going to be 1 3/4, so we are going to have to grind this out slightly. Now, due to the thickness in there, which you can't see because it's too dark, oh, there you go. It's about 1 inch thick. So when I grind this out, I'm not going to grind that entire inch out. I'm just basically going to chamfer or bevel this edge, whichever is the correct term. It's only coming out to about where my fingernail is there. That's about the difference between 1.5 and 1 3/4 inch when you obviously make it a circle. So we're just going to chamfer that edge down slightly, and that's not going to do any harm with your Venturi. Obviously it reduces in size as it goes through anyway. It comes through the carb wide, goes in there, but by the time it goes in through your head, it's smaller in size again. So, So we take this one over to the car, because I didn't actually know whether it was going to fit. I took a bit of a gamble looking at the size, and whilst you can't really see it because, you know, got hoses in the way, it is the same size. I've measured between the 2 points and it's the same size. So that is our first piece to the puzzle, a single carb inlet manifold that is compatible with the 1500 block. I did a bit of reading after I bought it, of course, and the Triumph Toledo did come with a 1500 engine in it, so, you know, it should be exactly the same inlet manifold. Fingers crossed, but it looks about right. And as I said before, I don't even know if it's going to work. I don't even know if a single carb setup is going to work. Is it going to run really badly? Is it going to bog down? Is it still going to have the same power at low and at high RPMs, etc.? I don't know. But there's two things to consider. One is that later model cars used a HIF44 and they had bigger engines than mine, 1.6, 1.7, turbocharged, supercharged. It fed those cars perfectly adequately, so there's that. And the second thing is, I'm not a race driver. This isn't a track car. I literally use it for pootling around in the summer. Sometimes if I get out on an open road, a B road somewhere, and it's nice and sunny and there's no other traffic, you might give it the older, you know, get the toe into it a little bit. But even then, you're talking what? 50 miles an hour, 60 tops. The roads around here aren't really set up for speeds like that. It's not a highway cruiser, it's never going to be that. So again, I'm not worried if it's, you know, slightly down on power or whatever, but I've got the carburetor arriving tomorrow, so hopefully over the course of the weekend. I don't know what the stud pattern on the carburetor is like compared to the manifold. Looking at pictures of it, it looks about the same, but of course that means nothing until I actually get it in my hands. So it'll be interesting to get this bad boy on, get it fired up and see what it's actually like.
Shinies. So first of all, our manifold. That has now been ground out to 1 3/4 inch. A little bit rough, but you know, it's smooth enough. It is only an inlet manifold. But that's nice, so that's done. Vacuum takeoff stud for our brake booster tapped in. That's good to go. The only thing I need to do is just cap off that hole on top, which I'll probably do with a bit of silicone. I'll show you how we do that. It's a spare vacuum takeoff stud. The thread for this was too small for that. I would have had to put an insert, a helicoil into that in order to use my existing barb. So that's why I redrawed it that side. This one was just too big already. So manifold, good to go. Then we have our carb, which a nice gentleman dropped down for me yesterday. K&N air filter, nice. And this is obviously the HIF44 and it's in spanking condition. That's Brit-Spit, good. He said he thinks it's been freshly rebuilt and brand new, and by the look of it, I'll be inclined to agree. There's no dirt or anything on it, all the brass looks good, the throttle butterfly, there's no movement in it, it really does look nice. All the linkages and stuff are present and correct. And it's one carb, and most importantly, it fits on the manifold without any messing around. If I take the spacer block that it comes with and I drop that on top of the manifold, we're good. No need to machine a spacer plate to go with it. The only thing I do need to do is to find the actual, buy some studs to actually mount it on, because they're threaded but the carb isn't, so we need some studs or bolts. I'll work something out for mounting it, make myself another gasket. So that's good. So what we'll do, let's have a quick, slightly more in-depth look at this carb for a second. So your HIF44 carb is essentially the same as your SU, like your HS4s. The only real difference is that the fuel pot. The fuel pot on the HIF44 is actually attached to the bottom of the carb, or as you know, on the HS units it's on the side and the fuel goes via a little rubber line, which of course is bound to fail at some point, so having it as one complete unit actually makes complete sense. So other than that, it's identical. So we have manifold side with our throttle butterfly, operates in exactly the same way, moves like so. We have a screw inside here, which is our idle screw, and that props it open. There. So if you run that screw, you can see the screw just down inside there. Try and do this upside down and point with a screwdriver. You get the idea. That's your idle screw. That's your throttle. Below that we have our choke, and we can see that this then is our fast idle screw, because that's where it sits against the choke. So if we open the choke, we can see the first thing it does there is props open that fast idle, and then as we put the rest of the weight, it's then going to richen it by dropping the jet, or however it works inside this one. On a HS4 or HS2, obviously the choke pushes the jet downwards, therefore richening it. This one is internal, so I don't know what it does on the inside. You'd assume it's the same thing. So our standard idle screw, our fast idle screw, and then the last one you've really got then is your mixture screw, which on the other side is this one in here. And I'll take the air filter off at some point and show you, but as you turn this screw in and out, it just raises and lowers the jet as a mixture screw would on anyone. So that's pretty much it, and that's why 1-to-1 air filter. There's one of everything. We have fuel in on this side. If you blow through it in this orientation, or sorry, in the correct orientation, then it will you can blow through it. If you turn it upside down and try and blow through it, it won't, which means the float's doing the thing. We have the breather or fuel return on top, not sure which it is. Now on mine, I'll leave this one uncapped and open to allow it to work as a breather. Whether it's meant to be used as a breather or a fuel return, I don't know. With a standard low pressure fuel pump, I've never had any fuel squirt out of here. If the float's doing its job, you should never have any fuel coming out of here anyway. And then we have your vacuum takeoff. Okay, which will go, or you can use that for whatever you want, but on mine this will go back to the top of the valve cover, I expect, which will act as a breather. And then we have our vacuum advance, whatever we call this, spigot, nipple thing, which goes to your dizzy, obviously to do your advance. And that's it. It's a nice all-in-one complete unit. We've got our heat shield here. Our throttle cable comes down through the top here and attached into the throttle. And the choke cable, there isn't actually a mounting on here that I can see for the choke cable, but what there is there is this tab sticking out here. So what I may do is drill a hole through that, because there's no other purpose to it, which can then come down through here and attach to the choke linkage there. So I may do that as well at some point. But that's it. Dashboard works in the same way. It's got your piston, your damper inside. Oops. If I pull the throttle open, you can see the pot inside there. She's going up and down okay. Obviously there's no oil inside at the moment because it was a chap dropped it down to me. You don't want oil over the floor. So you just need to put oil in it, rig up all your fuel lines and your cables, and we're good to go. And then when it's complete on the car, that's how it will look. Obviously the carb sits a little bit high on these ones, but that's okay because I got my custom bonnet and it'll all fit.
Well, that's weird. Rain. In the UK? No. I better wait till it stops. Okay, James. Why have we got all the manifolds off? This doesn't look good, does it? No. We have a snag. So, apologies for the rain noise, it ain't gonna stop. Our 1500 exhaust manifold and our inlet manifold. Plump. It stops there.
doesn't go all the way down. It catches on the bottom edge of this manifold, this water channel, because this sticks out too much. Now if we compare the Toledo manifold with the twin HS4, you can immediately see the difference in depth in the middle. Toledo deep here, HS4 manifold not. Because obviously HS4 has twin carbs. Each carb feeds 2 cylinders. You don't need a bit across the middle other than for the water path. Of course, one carb, it comes in the middle, so it needs to go to that side and it needs to go to this side. So therefore it's thicker this way. So that's the snag. Now, I contemplated grinding this out, taking this water channel off, we don't need it, and then seeing if that would fit, or maybe perhaps grind this back a bit. I've had a read online, a chap's already tried it, he said don't bother, it ain't going to work, it's still too big. So, I got no choice really, have I? Well, I got 2 choices. I can either shelve the entire thing and go, you know what, it didn't work, whatever, move on, not my style. Or we can get another exhaust manifold and try again, which is exactly what we're going to do. Now, earlier exhaust manifolds were a different shape. Whereas the 1500, you notice the central 2 ports go over the outside ports, right? We can see it goes over and then down, and that's the problem. Earlier ones didn't go over. This one comes down to 2 ports, earlier ones came down to 1, which meant that all 4 just fed in like this. There was no big massive lump in the middle like this one has. So this is better because it's a better curvature for your exhaust to flow, but in my case, when I want to stick a carb here between these 2 points, we can see there's just no space. Now, having a look around on the line, trying to find a better exhaust manifold is a bit of a nightmare. You think these things will be 10 a penny, everyone will be trying to get rid of them. Not the case. I found a couple earlier, 1300 manifolds, but they're either miles away, not willing to post because they're cast iron, or they are stainless steel ones that people want silly money for, 300 quid for a manifold, and I ain't paying 300 quid for a manifold. So, I've ordered a midget 1500 manifold, because the midget 1500 engine, I've been reliably informed, is actually a Triumph 1500 engine. I know the 1275s were different and the later 1800s were different. I think they were just Austin or BMC engines or whatever, but the 1500 was a Triumph engine, so the pattern for the head should be the same. And like I was just saying, it's 4 going into 1, so it should be shallower. Now, people have said yes, that should fit. We'll wait and see. You may still have to grind the water channel off. Okay, not bothered about the water channel. Now, on that point, just a bit of trivia here. I was looking at the water channel, and I may have said earlier, I don't get the water channel. Because, what's the point? If it's trying to take warmth from the water to heat up your inlet manifold, to help for cold starts, it doesn't make any sense. Because obviously when you start the car, your water's cold. I don't think that's what it's for. You might be shouting at me going, that's not what it's for, James, and I think I've figured it out now. It's not what it's for. It's not to heat the manifold from the water, because why would you want to heat a manifold? Manifolds run better cold, right? Air burns better when it's cold, so why would you want warm air going through? It's to heat the heater matrix, I think. I think the water channel is on the bottom of the inlet manifold because it's near the exhaust. So when you start the engine, right, the exhaust gets warm, so therefore any water coming from the water pump towards your heater matrix is being warmed by the exhaust. I think that's what it's for. I don't know, I'm guessing, but I think that's what it's for. So when you turn your heater on, freezing cold in the winter, you haven't got to wait for the water to warm up per se, via the engine. You're getting warmth coming through to the matrix from the exhaust. I think that's what it's for. But also, the water channel is part of the inlet manifold, so as that gets warm with the exhaust, it's going to affect the burning of the cold air, isn't it? I don't know.
Either way, I can grind it off. I don't use the heater, I drive the car in the summer, not of interest to me. And even if I did want to drive the car in the winter, for whatever reason, I can always just plumb a bit of line from the water pump to the heater matrix and just snake it underneath the inlet manifold. It doesn't have to go through the inlet manifold, is what I'm saying. So, bit of a stumbling block really. I can't really go any further with my single carb inlet manifold until I get a new exhaust manifold, which is on the way, hopefully here in the next couple of days. So we'll see. And a few people have said you shouldn't really be using the Toledo manifold. It's not the best one. The Herald manifold is better. The Herald manifold is actually a lot smoother in terms of curvature, whereas the Toledo one is a bit ink, 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 which, you know, when you're talking about induction air hitting corners, it's not ideal. You know, it doesn't take a mechanic to figure that one out. But there it is. That's the one I got. That's what I'm working with. We'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work or it's not very good, then I'll just bite the bullet, maybe buy a Herald manifold. And if the whole thing just doesn't work for whatever reason, then I can just go back to my original manifold and carbs. I know it works. I know the car runs. It's fine. Nothing I'm doing is irreversible. Let's put it that way. But hopefully it does, right? Because it'd be nice. Single carb conversion, a lot less messing around, no linkages, no vacuum balancing, multi-mixture things. You know, to me that seems appealing. You can just tweak a screw and, you know, change your running. But again, until it's all put together, I don't know. So I think we'll wrap it up there. That's probably enough for part one, right? Enough of me yabbering on about manifolds. So I will update part two shortly when my new manifold, exhaust manifold comes. Hopefully it fits, and we can move on from there. We'll see. Anyway, until then, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.